everyone has their own relationship with their muses, but mine are very sarcastic and they like to be courted. I think we want to make authentic art, and it can't happen fast. It can't be, we can't rush the muses. We just can't say, all right, we're ready for the next album and we need to do a tour cycle and it needs to start in the fall. The muses are like, no, sorry, we're going to shut the door. You're not coming in that way.
Welcome to Voices of Esalen. I'm Sam Stern. Today my guest is Leah Song, one half of the musical duo Rising Appalachia. Alongside her sister Chloe, they are an internationally touring folk ensemble steeped in the soul of the South. Rising Appalachia blends Americana music with lyrics, rhythm, and poetry to form a unique sound influenced by a blend of Appalachian, Irish, Latin, and world roots music. Leah was at Esalen Institute for a week this summer to dance and make music with Lucia, Horan, and Douglas Drummond's 5 Rhythms workshop, and she was kind enough to do a live interview on a Wednesday evening for a rapt audience of more than 100 lucky souls. I was joined in my interview duties by my partner, Candace is Fording. What transpired was quite beautiful. Here's our conversation with artist, writer, performer, musician, and all-around modern mystical wise woman, Leah Song.
Hi, beautiful people. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm Candace, by the way. I'm the head of the farm and garden here at Esalen. Some of you I know, some of you are familiar faces I've seen in the garden. I am so honored to be here tonight with Leah. She has been part of one of my favorite musical groups the past decade. And Sam is my husband, and he knew that, and so he invited me in to help with this interview. It's such a dream come true to be sitting up here and to get to know Leah with all of you. So we're going to start off with a song tonight. So sit back and enjoy.
Yeah. Hi. I've already danced and cried and sweat with most of you, so feeling like we're pretty connected already. But this is my other life. So I thought I'd start with a song called Goldenrod, and this is a contemporary folk song written by a man named Joe Croxton. But it works for where we are and what's happening here, so this is Goldenrod. When my life is over and I have gone away, I'll leave this big old world and the trouble and the pain. And if I get to heaven, I will not stay. I'll turn myself around again and come back as the rain. Come back as the rain, I'll come back as the rain. Turn myself around again and come back as the rain. When those raindrops hit the ground and sink into the sod, turn myself around again and come back as goldenrod. Come back as goldenrod, I'll come back as goldenrod. Turn myself around again and come back as goldenrod. When my leaves turn dead and brown and I lay down to rest, turn myself around again as part of an eagle's nest. Part of an eagle's nest, oh, part of an eagle's nest. Turn myself around again as part of an eagle's nest. When those eagle flies away, I will not flee. Turn myself around again as part of the mystery. Part of the mystery, oh, part of the mystery. Turn myself around again as part of the mystery. When my life is over and I've gone away, leave this big old world and the trouble and the pain. And if I get to heaven, I will not stay. Turn myself around again and come back as the rain. Come back as the rain, I'll come back as the rain. Turn myself around again and come back as the rain. Come back as the rain, I'll come back as the rain. Turn myself around again and come back as the rain. And come back as the rain. And come back as the rain.
Thank you. Thanks for grounding us into this space with drum and your heart and
garden songs.
I know, right? I felt like, yes, we're here. I was curious about the Southern Trifecta, where you're from. Where is the Southern Trifecta? What were the influences there that intersected in your life and your creative process?
Totally. It's funny, when you asked that, I was like, wow, the Trifecta is the name that I call my sister, myself, and my sister's partner. We're the Trifecta. And I was like, you guys really researched. How did you know that part? But the our southern roots, which I have called the Trifecta or the Trinity, we're born and raised in Georgia. My sister and I, blood sisters, same mama, same papa. I like to tell everyone that piece because, sister is used quite broadly nowadays. But we were raised in Georgia in our family home that our folks are still in this real artsy neighborhood in the center of downtown Atlanta, but with a big folk music kind of enclave. There were contra dances and old-time string band practices in our living room, which as teenagers was really, really embarrassing, but grew to be really exciting much later on. So Atlanta was our home turf, and we had this sort of the Appalachian influence, and then we had the very deep urban influence. We were public school kids, and we were raised in the era of 90s hip-hop, which is the greatest modern folk music, in my opinion. So that was like one branch of the tree was trying to get into underground outcast clubs, and the other was like contra dance music in our living room, which was like this really weird mashup that we turned into a career somehow. And then, so we had sort of the city roots, and then we had the roots of the Southern Mountains, which we have lived in and traversed in since we were kids. The whole culture of Southern Appalachia, which our mom is a fiddler, and we spend a lot of time learning the farming and the flora and fauna, the herbal traditions and the music traditions. And then right after Hurricane Katrina hit, we moved down to New Orleans. We were part of an amazing arts organization called Alternate Roots that had a stronghold in kind of arts and activism. And so we moved down to New Orleans after the storm and spent about 7 years living in the city of New Orleans and being participants in the rebuilding, but also being rebuilt ourselves, because New Orleans kind of refocused our understanding of music, even in its most desolate times, there was this sense of like, oh, you're a musician? Like, we want you here. We need you here. And, music was in our lives very casually. Our family are all players, but very much as a hobby. And no one had ever said, oh, we need your music. So we spent many, many years in New Orleans, and we consider this sort of city and the swamp and the creative culture of the cracks of New Orleans such a big part of it. We really cut our teeth as buskers, and so our bigger years learning our craft were just on the streets of New Orleans. And it's one thing if like a tourist gives you $1 or $2 and they're like, oh, cool, New Orleans art. But if the postman gives you $1 or like the folks on the way to their grocery store, then you start learning this is a good song. Let me like keep working on this one. So those three places and those three regions, which are like distinctly different Southern, were all hugely part of our relationship to home, our relationship to South, and the music and traditions, and that would be the Southern Trifecta.
So Leah, your music, it's so eclectic. You know, it's got Appalachian, it's got Irish, it's got some Americana, some world and electronic. And I'm just curious, has that been the way that it's been since the very beginning? Or was it kind of an evolution to be so profoundly eclectic?
No, it was from the very, very beginning. Our first album we made as a Christmas present to our parents. We weren't trying to make a band at all. And we said, our father was going through a hard time, and we had both left the house and became adults. And our parents were like, whoa, who are we as empty nesters? And we were like, let's make a collection of songs that they've taught us, kind of to give back to them, to say like, okay, we're out in the world, but we kind of remember the way you raised us. And we recorded it in a day and an afternoon in a friend's studio. We already had our dear friend that was a jazz trumpet player came in and laid jazz trumpet on, and there were like these weird messed up congas in the corner of the studio. And we were like, let's throw that under the banjo. And I remember Chloe was playing clawhammer banjo, and I was like, and tripped out this whole banjo thing. And so it really sort of started that way. And it's like true to who we are, true to how we were raised. Like I said, the old Appalachian folk music and the Southern soul and hip hop were both in our bloodline from very young on. And so mixing them was very authentic to us and very peculiar to the whole rest of the world, But it's been in there. The music industry does not know what to do with us. They're like, what genre do we put you in? And I don't know the answer still. I just like to think of it as folk, because it's the storytelling music. It's our version of the stories of our lives, the stories of the South, and our lens of that. But I think it's just kind of an umbrella term that should cover lots of styles of music. It's that understanding of folk music being like the storytelling music.
So I wanted to talk with you about your music having such a reverence for nature and land, and you're a land steward and a plant lover, and I've heard you talk about soil-based practices, and I'm just curious how you came into being that type of human and how that is weaving together with your music.
Yes, we brought the farmer on to interview. It's perfect. When I was little, we have this backyard right in the center of the city, and my dad would always say, like, there's leprechauns out there. And I was like, for real? And I would just sit outside in the field of clovers and like talk to the leprechauns for many hours of my childhood. So I think my relationship with like the land spirits started very early. But, when we first started playing, our anchor was just kind of learning the folk music of our family. We were invited to play we weren't even invited yet. We were like, we can play music in exchange for our tickets to an Herbal conference. This is step one. And they were like, great, you can play at the lobby, you can play when they're coming in, you can play at the end of this class and the end of this class. And like, we had 16 little spots to play music in exchange for our like $46 tickets or whatever, And we were like, sweet, we are making it, But at that conference was the amazing teacher and elder and sort of godmother of American herbalism, Rosemary Gladstar. And she saw us playing, and she said, girls, I'm going to take you under my wing. And she did. She took us under her wing as a godmother and as a businesswoman and as a plant person in all forms. And she just said, just come with me. And she counseled us in all sorts of things, everything from like what herbs to take to keep our liver intact if we were going to be flying a lot, to how to incorporate the price of our flights into a gig, And so we all of a sudden became like the monopoly band of Herbal conferences, which you guys, that was never a gig before this moment in history, I believe. And it was like, I believe a big part of the reason why we're still playing music, because most musicians become the monopoly band of the dive bar scene. Like, that's how you get in. You break in by playing over and over and over again. And we just got swooped into every land-based herbal medicine conference all over the country. And it was such an amazing few years where we were like, oh, we can handle this. So we got like the backdoor education, and now we have the rest of our lives to do lots of follow-up to actually, know and have the relationship with the plants and the ground. But props to Rosemary Gladstar. She took us in. So.
Thank you.
Are there particular plants or herbs that you feel are your allies? Just curious.
Totally. Well, I like a big prayer to the mate plant. I drink yerba mate on a regular basis. My sister is a new mom, and when they asked this, we were asked this question, and she said, "I'd like to shout out the coffee plant." But okay. Also, I love borage that you have in the garden here. I love nettle. I think nettle is a voracious, wonderful ally. I actually like that it stings. I think that's like part of its potency. I'm a big fan of the chestnuts that we have in the South. I go and harvest chestnuts like a lunatic every fall and bring roasted chestnuts to every potluck, like anywhere in sight. So I'm continuing to learn them here. I don't know the West Coast allies as well yet. Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about your activism, because your work really, it intersects with activism. And I know you've advocated for food justice, for human rights, and you've been involved in prison activism. And I'm interested about how activism came into your life and how you balance your roles as artist and activist.
Yeah. I think that I started first kind of as an activist, and the arts were part of my language forever. But I wanted to figure out how to spin this crazy world just in a tiny bit of a different direction. And I went to a lot of protests and marches and stood with the School of America's vigils in Georgia and did a lot of work in environmental justice. I had a lot of friends in public school that got in a lot of trouble. And so my relationship to prison advocacy, prison justice had to do with watching the system really break people that were often already coming from really broken places. And also often the ones that got in the most trouble were sometimes the most clever. So I got into prison advocacy from watching so many of my friends land themselves there. But all of that kind of, as it was culminating, all of these branches of just disdain for what's happening in our planet, in our country. I remember going to a protest and like hearing all the politicians yelling and getting people to sign things, and I feel this even more so now, just like the fury of it and the hostility, and how many people that turned away, how many potentially curious people were turned away by like the harshness of activism. And then I realized, if you can kind of sneak these things into art, or not even sneak them in, but perhaps like present them as questions, as provocations, then like how much wider can we reach? And it started really feeling like actually performance and art and music and movement and, the ways that we actually soften into our human story was going to actually work a lot better than the fist in the air frontline marches. And I think, part of it was like a strategic decision to be like, we're gonna be able to do a lot more with this work from the lens of creativity, and that's how it's continued to feel. Yeah.
I can relate to that. I feel I went on a journey similar and sort of felt that harshness in activism, and also was at the School of the Americas and got arrested out there for the first time. Probably maybe even the same year.
Oh, yeah. Good one to get arrested at.
Yes, it is. Kind of seeing what your energy and how it can best be applied to the causes. And I know that you've talked about in other interviews being an optimist by choice. And I loved hearing that. And I was wondering if you would speak a little bit about how you stay positive and hopeful in a world that presents so many challenges, and ones that you obviously stay in touch with, the environmental and social challenges we face. And what are your practices and philosophies with that?
I've become a hermit. I'm staying less in touch because I think I read once that we get more information in a single day than in the New York Times than you're supposed to be able to process in an entire lifetime of someone, several hundred years back. And that really clicked, where I was like, whoa, we are not going to be able to wrangle this one. A woman at an herbalist conference came over to me in the mid-fight of a very full year of activism and performance and touring can be exhausting in its own right. And she looked at me really closely and she said, "Look, I can see that the spark in your eye is really, really dull. And I just want you to know," and she was beautiful, silver-haired older woman. She said, "I want you to know that if that spark dies, it's really hard to revive it. So you need to do whatever you need to do, whatever you can do to make sure that your own spark stays vital. You need to address this immediately." And it was like a stop in your tracks, sobbing in the middle of the walkway, in this woman's presence. I still don't know who she was. And realizing okay, so much of what we're doing in this 5 rhythms training, it's you have to actually tend to your own spark and your own center and your own care in order to then be of service. And the second that you sort of enter martyrdom, everything falls apart. And I think that takes a little while to learn, I think you have to kind of rub up against some dark places before you're all right, I'm not serving anybody in this state. So this is my entryway. This week is my entryway into an official sabbatical season. So we're witnessing here how in the world we're figuring out how to take care of ourselves in the light of all of those things. So it's been about 15 years of a pretty full-time tour schedule. And our last gig was at Tree Bones. And then this is my treat to myself, is to be a student here with all of you. So we're trying this whole rest and self-care thing. We'll let you know how it goes. The whole enter the mystery, that prompt we keep getting given every day, go into the mystery. I'm okay, what's going to happen next? I'm here, mystery. So this is the very beginning of the first season where there's literally not a gig on our calendar for the unforeseen future. So we'll see. I'll report back in a little bit.
You and your sister coined this phrase "slow music," and I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was invited to do a TED Talk about sustainable touring, and it was the most nerve-wracking I've ever been. This is kind of nerve-wracking too, actually. If this was a regular concert, I'd be no problem. But the get from point A to point Z in a thorough train of thought is a whole other art. And I tend to ramble and then lean on my bandmates to kick a song off. So I'm working on my conciseness. and my instruments are like not quite in reach. So, what are we talking about? Thanks. Yeah, I'll play a song after this. It'll help. Anyway, they were like, you have 8 minutes and you have to tell a story about what you've been doing, sustainable touring and all of this thing. And I was like, how do I get that into an arc? And the slow music movement was coined out of that pressure point, because it couldn't just be called like sustainable touring or Leah and Chloe's circus project. Like, it needed a title that worked. And that's where the slow music movement was coined, and the concept was really simple. It's what we had been doing for years and years. We toured in a biodiesel bus, converted school bus, 10,000 miles around the country, and like siphoned veggie oil from McDonald's, and these were in our hardcore days. And but also like really simple, fundamental things. Like in the music industry, you are often encouraged to basically be a hotshot and do one-offs and jet set and take a big gig in New York and then make sure that you're in LA the next day and then go to Florida and then go to Paris. And it's like encouraged. And we said a long time ago, we're not going to do that. Like, we need to be regional. We need to at least 3 to 5 gigs in a place where we can have relationship to local food, a relationship to the flora and fauna, to the temperature, to the weather. We're not going to do anything that looks like a kind of Celtic knot of touring, And that was a really unusual thing for the music industry. That the first tour that they booked us, our booking agent, I looked at it and I clocked 10-hour drives, and I called and I said, we're canceling the whole thing. And it was this very interesting tension between us and our booking agents, who are good folks who still work with us. And I said, look, I'm not kidding. We are not doing this. We're not going to do that to our bodies. And you have to get it down to a reasonable amount of time for us to complete the gig. And it caused this big riff. But now our booking agent like kind of knows our personality, and she works very hard to create space where we can actually have work within a region. It makes such a big difference. It sounds so obvious, but it's not obvious to the music industry. They're just they just see the paper and the ticket sales. So that was one thing. Regional gigs. We've toured by horseback. We've toured by train. We've toured by sailboat. Our sailboat tour, we would get on the boat and then you would go 6 miles an hour for like 17 hours to the next island, and then we would do another gig. That was amazing. And the album that we made called Wider Circles, we toured the U.S. by train, which was also unheard of. No one how many of you have been on a train in this country? Yeah, great. That's because we're on the West Coast. And you guys are progressive. Many parts of the country are like, wow, we have a train system. And we became national rail NARP, National Associates Rail Passenger members. And we did a whole tour with our all of our percussion, a stand-up bass, 3 fiddles, 2 guitars, banjo, a stack of merch, and we would ride a train 7 hours to the next town and pop out and do a show. So slow travel is, really a cool part of it. And then the last piece is that we bring in local thinkers, local gardeners, local activists, we worked with a project called the Permaculture Action Network, where we would do a concert, and then the next day there would be a whole group of gardener volunteers, and we would announce it to our audience, and half the audience would show up and participate in reclaiming a piece of urban plot or an old, abandoned piece of railroad track or whatever, and turn it into the first steps of a functional garden. So there are a lot of relationships with local volunteer organizations, and all of that has created a space where we feel somewhat like what we're doing is a tiny bit more sustainable than than most, and it's still upriver. So,
yeah, it sounds like too with this slow music, there's this element of creating community.
Yeah,
and so that feels like it's an important piece too.
Yeah.
Of what your musical project is it's not just activism, it's not just music, but it's really creating a vibe.
I think the word activist now has like a really interesting tenor to it. Like I think it's morphing and changing, and it's a term that I don't always know if I identify with as much anymore. But community builder, I think I identify with in every way, and so I think that's about right. Mm-hmm. Can I do a song now?
Yes, on that note, let's do a song. Give her a break.
Gives my brain a breather. I said I was going to try a few new ones. I figured you guys were a great audience to test stuff on. And I've been just finding all the songs that feel relevant to hear. So this is an old clawhammer banjo. It was made in North Carolina, in the southern Appalachians. I'm glad we all got our lesson in Appalachia. Appalachia is not wrong, but in the South we say Appalachia, throw it Appalachia. This is a song, another contemporary song called Our Lady of the Tall Trees. And I'm going to play in an old style called clawhammer, which is the old kind of American banjo style. But it makes me think of all these trees out here. The tall trees, Our Lady of the night, Our Lady of this and that and other things that we forgot. Our Lady of the tall trees, Our Lady of the night, wears the skins and rice and beans and other things that she bought. Our Lady of the tall trees, Our Lady of the tall trees, supper served. Our Lady of the tall trees, Our Lady of the night, Our Lady of this and that and other things that we forgot. Our Lady of the tall trees, wears the wind and she wears the breeze, wears the wind and she wears the sleeves all up on her arms. Our Lady of the tall trees, Our Lady of the tall trees, supper served. Our Lady of the tall trees, wears the wind and she wears the breeze, wears the wind and she wears the sleeves all up on her arms. Our Lady of the tall trees, wears the wind and she wears the breeze, wears the wind and she wears her leaves almost effortlessly. Our Lady of the tall supper served. Our Lady of the Tall Trees wears the wind and she wears the breeze, wears the wind and she wears the sleeves all up on her arms. Our Lady of the Tall Trees wears the wind and she wears the breeze, wears the wind and she wears the leaves almost effortlessly. Our Lady of the tall trees. Our Lady of the tall trees. Supper served. All right. Brain's working again.
Thank you so much for that. Did you say that's one of your new songs?
It's not an original, but it's a new one for me learning. I actually learned it at the Bolinas Fiddle Camp, not too far from here. Callahan Morrison is their author of that.
Beautiful. So when I first discovered you, or I should say when Candace discovered you and let me in on it, it was like a decade ago, and it was in the kind of the festival scene. And y'all were kind of the coolest people in the world, to be honest. And in a very
big farce,
cool scene. I'm just, it's like a decade later and we're a little older, a little wiser. And I was just curious how your relationship to that particular scene has evolved and in what ways, what changes have you felt in the way that you engage?
Great question. Such good questions. Yeah. So we grew up going to fiddle camps, literally growing up, going to all these music camps all across the South, North Carolina, West Virginia, Alabama. And we were in tote of our parents who were playing fiddle and guitar, and we would fall asleep in our dad's guitar case and they would play contra dances. And, that was their version of raging. And we loved it, actually. My mom can still out-party all of us if she has a fiddle. First, when we started playing, we were like, all right, it would be really nice to get into the folk music communities, which we've done a little bit of, and played we played Telluride Bluegrass a few years ago, which was a real big honor, and Hardly Strictly here in California, which was amazing. And at some point, we were like, oh, there's this scene happening. I think it seems to be called transformational music festivals, and we're musicians, what's happening in there? And we did kind of nose around in it, and we were like, that would be fun. Maybe we could get a few gigs there. And we did. We played, I think our first one was at Envision Fest in Costa Rica, and it was a wonderful, wonderful show, and there was an amazing, I think the kind of origin of those festivals came from a very, very beautiful place of creative space and no single-use plastic, bringing in a lot of Native and Indigenous elders and teachers, and creating a space where festivals were bigger than just a party, and they had a tendency to give back. And when we first got involved, I think it really felt that way. And then I think we started feeling pretty overwhelmed by those festivals and maybe just festivals in general, where it seemed like we were the only band in a sea of electronic music. And electronic music is fine. I actually quite like a lot of it. But we would get to the stage and we would have a cello, a stand-up bass, a baritone guitar, an acoustic guitar, 3 fiddles, 2 banjos, and the sound engineer would say, I'm sorry, what is that? And we would say, well, that's a guitar. You just plug it in right here. And they were like, if you don't have the laptop and then just, we don't know what to do with you. And so very quickly it felt like, once again, we were the monopoly folk band now at these big electronic music festivals. And in a one way, I felt like, oh, I see our purpose here. We will play the Sunday morning set or the Saturday sunset set, and the audience would come from afar, just kind of wow, three-dimensional music, you know. It felt, we were like, oh, we're purpose. But then it also felt like, wow, it would be really nice to play in gatherings with other folk musicians and to actually be able to have that camaraderie that's built in so many different spaces where, you know, you sit in with each other and there's just like this big community space of music. And so I do wish very much that those two communities were not so far apart. So the folk music festivals are so amazing, and they can be a bit purist. And, you know, if it's not done really, really kind of in this specific form of folk music, then you're not very welcome. And the sort of transformational music festivals can feel so electronic. And it would be real nice to see those things kind of come closer together. And perhaps we can participate in being a little bit of that bridge. But it has been quite a journey in seeing all of these different gatherings kind of take their shape and then change their shape. And this has been an interesting year. We've had 3 festivals canceled on us. And so I think also festivals are having a hard time. People are gathering in different ways. I think post-COVID, there's a real different relationship to travel. There's a real different relationship to gathering. And so I think that it's in a phase of rebirth, actually, and maybe that is for the better.
Thank you. You've spoken about power of ritual and rites of passage in your music and also in interviews I've heard with you. And I was wondering if you could speak about that, the importance of rituals in your life and in general for humans, the importance of ritual.
Yeah, well, we're all kind of in one here. This is a pretty ritual space. Good work calling us in. You know, for me, at one point, again, like everything has its chapter. I used to travel with big altars, and I would tie, you know, my pouches of leather and crystals around the microphone and walk 6 times one way and 6 times the other and do breath work beforehand. And now I'm like, oh, this ring is going to be such a pretty part of my altar. Like, that looks great, you know, like this hair tie is very special. Like, everything has to fit in a small suitcase now. So the rituals have gotten simple. But I do really believe, I mean, I just sat and did 3 breaths right before we walked in this space, you know, and sometimes it's just as simple as landing and walking before I enter the inside of a room. So I think the ritual space in my life has changed. It's become much less grandiose and much more quiet and personal. But I also think just this space of stage, of sharing, of performance is also its own ritual. And I think we all find little ways to bring that into our daily. I do for certain.
Yeah, it's like the collective coming together with presence and reverence and intention. And we have lost so much of that in our regular lives. And I've heard you speak about, bringing it back in to help kind of bring us more into balance with our humanness.
And just slowing down is such a ritual. Even just being in a place where we've all turned our phones off is an unbelievably, I mean, it should not be so profound. It's like, wow, we've all done it. Nobody's checking anything right now. And that feels even like this important stretch to being in spaces where we're just connecting in deeper ways. So we have a bit of an uphill road to hold ritual space, I think, in modern times. And so I applaud anyone who finds even slivers of ways to bring it back into our lives.
Yeah. Even just speaking about it being important, just like have a step closer to, having it in our lives.
Your recent album, Folk and Anchor, is a collection of cover songs.
Yay.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of selecting and reinterpreting these songs?
Totally. Well, we got to cover a Beyonce song, which I never thought I'd see that day. You know, we sort of have been stirring the idea of this sabbatical for a little while, and we were like, well, it would be nice to have a little bit of something creative to send out before we pause. And so we recorded most of that collection about a year and a half ago. It takes a long time for music to come from inside of our minds all the way through the portal and into the world. And so a lot of them were already ready. We wanted, like we were saying at the beginning of this talk, like what in the world is our genre? And we wanted to actually collect a bunch of songs that just showcased what we love. So it's Bob Dylan, Beyonce, Hozier, which was a big favorite to lean into. It's Hozier and Maren Morris, so it's got a little Nashville, a little Irish traditional in there. James Blake, who is a legendary producer, and his song with Bon Iver, who are both real influential pop musicians. Erykah Badu, which that one, Erykah Badu and Beyonce were the last to get on the album, and we tried to get a Billie Eilish one on there, and we were like, we can't pull this off. But, you know, the Erykah Badu one is one that we probably listened to at least 10,000 times in the 90s. Oh, on and on and on and on. A lot of you know it. Maybe you don't all know it. I think I need a cup of tea. The world keeps turning. Oh, what a day. What a day, what a day. And it's just, she was like the original kind of priestess, folk, pop, rap, herbalist queen, you know? She's talking about like women and herbs and tea. And I was like, oh, she's actually our queen. Erykah is the queen. So, and then Beyonce, you know, we also listened to Beyonce's original girl band in the 90s, but the album that she just put out, the country album, what's really important for folks to know is that the banjo is tied to a very beautiful West African instrument called the akonting, which is a very powerful folkloric four-stringed instrument that comes originally from Senegal. And there is an entire, very rich history of black banjo players in America and prior to America, the predecessor of the banjo, the akonting. And that's not talked about or showcased in pop culture and popular culture in any way at all. And so Beyonce putting together a country album, love it or hate it, I don't judge any perspective of people's tastes on it, but what it really did was bring the lens back to how much of the country traditions are also tied in to the Black American story. And the banjo specifically, we grew up knowing that clawhammer banjo had a very rich history, but it's very unknown to most of the American populace. And the hook on that banjo song is played by an incredible musician named Rhianna Giddens, who is a dear friend of ours, who co-founded a band called the Carolina Chocolate Drops. And she has done tremendous work in the storytelling and the folklore of the Black American South. And so we reached out to Rhianna Giddens, different than Rhiannon, when that song came out, and said, we're going to try and do a cover of it, you know, and it would be a real big honor if you wanted to sit in on it. And she said, you know, girls, I would love to collaborate with you, but for many, many reasons, it cannot be on the Beyonce track. So we'll have to find another one down the line to do. But you know, with permission, you're welcome to lean into that one. And so that was the final piece to make it onto the album, was Texas Hold'em. And it felt like a really important part of the story of our relationship to Southern American music to have that one on there.
Yeah, I know Sam was thinking this too. Our favorite concert we ever saw was Erykah Badu.
Oh, yeah.
And she talked about slow music. She came out and poured a cup of tea at the entrance to the show and just sat and drank tea while everybody watched her drink tea. And it was the best concert we ever saw.
Erykah, she's my queen.
Yeah, she's a queen. You spoke about embracing the unknown. And I think for Esalen, a lot of people come here in a time of transition and a time of the unknown. And I was just wondering if you want to speak about that philosophy and how it's influenced your life.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we already spoke about it a little, just in this sense that it's very unknown for us to be pointed towards a season of spaciousness and a season of we're literally like putting a iron rod into the wheel of a very well greased machine, and we're doing it on purpose, just stopping this relatively successful and really still pretty enamored project from doing what it does best. And I really believe, even though it's somewhat terrifying, that as awkward and uncomfortable as spaciousness is, and as natural as it is for us to fill our time and our minds and our days with busyness, that something else happens when space comes in, that it's a really important thing to kind of sit on the ledge of not knowing what's coming or not knowing what you're going to do next. And it's an uncomfortable place. And it's a pretty easily avoided place. But my sister and I thankfully sit in the same presence, I think, in our relationship with each other. And our band trusts us. I think that they're a little more unclear, like, why are we doing this? But I think they trust us. And she and I feel really clear that there's not a way to grow well without time and space. And maybe even the discomfort that comes in there. And there's also, I think we want to make authentic art. And it can't happen fast. It can't be, we can't rush the muses. We just can't say, all right, we're ready for the next album and we need to do a tour cycle and it needs to start in the fall. Like, the muses are like, no, sorry, we're going to shut the door. You're not coming in that way. And everyone has their own relationship with their muses, but mine are very sarcastic and they like to be courted. There's a romantic thing there too. They want to be wined and dined. They don't like rushing at all. And that's our relationship. They're like, you stumble about a little bit, and be humbled and feel awkward and ask questions, and then we'll pay you some attention. But if you are just running at 900 miles an hour, climbing a sort of fake pedestal, which is what I think fame is. I think it's a very fake pedestal, and it is a disservice on both sides of the coin. I don't think the muses like that. They really don't. So I think that we have spent our whole lives trying really hard to show up and do what we write about, and to sort of respond to our lives the way we reflectively consider. And I think this is a big part of it, is intentionally slowing down, like a lot. And then there will be a speed up chapter, but you'll have all the energy to respond to the speed up chapter by leaning back again. So it's been so much amazingly complicated effort to even figure out how to slow down. But I really do believe in the longevity of that process, creatively and also for a holistic life. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we have a couple of other questions, but I also want to give you time and space to play. So I don't know how you're doing.
Cool.
The crowd has spoken.
The crowd has spoken. Cool.
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up because I actually had wanted to tell Leah this, so I'll tell her as she's tuning it. A friend gave me a CD, which one was it? Wider Circles. And I listened to it and I immediately loved it, but it also came to me in a time where I was kind of in a health crisis. So I had a surgery and I was laid up for a couple weeks after the surgery, and I just listened to the album like over and over and over again. And it was just like a healing salve to me. And so that's when I got super connected to the music. And I, after that, shared it with many people, especially people that were going through something like I went through, because it just felt like medicine music to me, and like the literal word of medicine. So, I wanted to thank her for that. And, for just somehow weaving in like such nutritive healing vibes.
We may unainis, me my fire, target is a whenever Maholuman target, it's me branumantar, Okadation on Tishinak winning shindo. Maholuman target, it's me branumantar, Okadation on Tishinak winning shindo. Mahina hula huir it's meranak noi punshuli do yagana bukhlobo Mahina shewera fishanum yanum sor okadeshin untishinak winin shindo Mahinan shewera fishanum yanum sor okadeshin untishinak winin shindo We may unainis, yeah, me my vaya, we punta get it so near Holuman target, it's me branumantar, Okadation and Tishinak winning shindo. Holuman target, it's me branumantar, Okadation and Tishinak winning shindo. Mahula hula where it's meranak noi, Punshuli do yagano bukhlobo. Hola shell where I fish on him yanum tor, Okadation and Tishinak winning shindo. My whole inter where I fish on him yanum tor, Okadation and Tishinak winning shindo. We may unainis, yeah, me my vaya, we se wini buio. Malolu mantar giris me vranu mantar. O kadai shindon te shinnak munin shindo. Malolu mantar giris me vranu mantar. O kadai shindon te shinnak munin shindo. I learned to sing in a lot of languages, but I went over to Ireland to try and learn some Irish Gaelic songs, and my mother's an Irish fiddler, so she's played a lot of old Irish music in our homes forever, and I said, I'm going to get at least like 5 or 6 or 7, and we went and studied with this song teacher for like 6 days, and she was like, girls, you're just la-lying. You're not even doing it. So it's been the slowest relationship with language, and it's really interesting because it's the root language of my bloodline. So if anyone is digging into those journeys, it's really worthwhile. Just take your time. The old languages are coming back.
Do you have any translation of what you were just singing for us?
The very rough translation is like, so what if I go and lay in the grassy fields in the sun? It's no one's business but my own. There's a lot more in there, but that gets the point. You know? I'm going to slowly see if I can get this puppy back in tune, but we can keep chatting in the meantime.
The last question I had for you was if you would be willing to share something with us that maybe most of your fans don't know about you, but that's something you want us to know about you.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Oh, that's a good seed. I'll take you there. We were talking when we first got here, and I'm really kind of a loner. I've always considered myself a bit of a lone wolf, and I travel actually usually with a wolf companion. I've had beautiful white wolves, kind of real ones, little like shepherd wolf pups, hang out with me a lot, and I've always really enjoyed that role, you know, the realm of the loner that kind of like perches and watches everyone and kind of engages and then removes myself. And my whole life I've enjoyed that role. And I have had such a peculiar relationship with being recognized, because it's like, and instantly it changes that. As soon as one person recognizes you in any space, that dynamic changes. You're not the observer. You're being observed, and you can tell when someone recognizes you. Usually from pretty far away. There's like a spark where you're like, okay. I was in the toothpaste aisle, and they were in the toothpaste aisle, and now they're like peering. And I'm going to see if I can go that way, but so you can often tell. And I was realizing, Doug and I were talking, and I was like, man, you know what happens when you have an entourage? Like the reason that people like to roll with big crowds and the whole thing changes. Like if you have a big dude in front of you, the seas will literally part. And we did actually, I didn't even tell you this part, we have a friend who's kind of like your stature, big, bald, and always wears black and like this big necklace with like tusks on it. You know, his name's Zay. He's a super dear friend. And I was like, Zay, I just need to get to the food court to get some food. And would you just walk in front of me and see what happens? And it's exactly what you said. I just placed him in front of me, this like big person in all black with tusk necklace. And all of a sudden, like, we could get anywhere. There's like me and Chloe and half the band, and we were like, wow, the seas just like sort of part. So I don't know if that's a story that like nobody knows, but I will say that I'm learning slowly the like power of group, you know, and the potency of kind of having a little nucleus of crew that you roll around in, with, whether it's people or creatures or whatever. And it's been another wonderfully awkward learning curve for me to like learn how to not be a lone wolf. So there's probably lots and lots and lots of things. I will say also the thing that I find really peculiar about a relationship with the public eye is that probably most of the stereotypes that we all get are like a little wrong, and it's really nice to just be able to be on ground level. I'm tremendously enjoying our week-long session here and being able to just be on the floor with everyone. Okay, I will tell one other story. On the floor with everybody, and I remember the first time I took Lucia's 5 Rhythms class was in Asheville, North Carolina, which is a small town that I spend a lot of time in. And as I've gotten more recognizable in that town, I've hit this like amazing relationship with social anxiety. I never had social anxiety. I quite like the stage. I like storytelling, but I've hit this place of social anxiety, and I remember coming in and being like, I don't know what I'm getting into here. Like, I don't know if I can do a 5 Rhythms thing, and I don't know if I can be in a space on the floor with everyone in this little town. And I remember feeling like, wow, this is a very, very safe container, very clean, very, very like well executed. And then we hit the chaos part of the dance where you like enact that everyone's freaking you out and you're going too fast. And I was like, wow, this is the most medicinal thing I've ever done for social anxiety. I was like, everyone recognizes me everywhere. Like, hi, you know, and like moved through all these people, all these fast feet. And I could feel it unwinding like years of social anxiety. It literally did it. And I did it again today. I was like, I'm in a crowd. Everyone's going really fast. And we have to like throw our hands away and twitch and wiggle a lot. And I was I think that literally unwound years and years of social anxiety. So kudos for that work. Creative culture shift that is unfolding, and I believe that we will receive that through song, beloved sound. And now are we holding? And I know sometimes you're tired, but baby, don't stop moving towards that fire. And I know we ain't got long. We are mighty warriors, stepped up in song, and I said, good morning, Tuesday. Thanks for your song. I like when I roll out of bed and it carries me along. And I wanna ask you for your lyrical touch to my newfound melody. Oh, I said, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I said, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I said, thank you very much. And ooh, yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Ooh, yeah. Thank you very much. I can hear the train track, love the sound go clickety-clack. We don't need no hotel, stories making bodies rocking. I wanna honor all the lessons of my father, all my life and longer. Together we are stronger, and I wanna sing all the songs taught by my mother. Be strong but still be subtle, let your life carve out your lover now. Love, let me tell you, we are out to get 'em. Nobody knows what hit 'em. Our song was made to lift 'em. And I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Do you want to sing that part? Okay, you're going to sing it and you just keep it going. Really simple the whole way through. So it's just like this. I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you. Keep it going. Thank you very much. I said, ooh, yeah. Thank you very much. Ooh, yeah. Thank you very much. Shut your eyes and just sing it over and over. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. One more. Thank you very much, I said thank you, I said thank you, I said thank you, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Nice singing. Just gets our folk choir warmed up. We'll be ready for it tomorrow. Thank you all so much. Thanks for beautiful, thoughtful, creative questions. And thanks
so
everyone for hanging and participating and decompressing.
Thank you for listening to Voices of Esalen. Today's show is produced in conjunction with Shira Levine. Our theme music is by Nico Holloman. If you're feeling inspired, please remember to rate us and review. Until next time, be well.